Hi and welcome everybody. I'm sharing a quick video today and I am creating some retro vintagey jelly prints with PanPastels. I already started and then I decided to record it for a video, and I'm using a stencil which is brand new and it will be released on January 15th, so that should be next Wednesday. And I am applying the PanPastels with some makeup sponges through the stencil onto the jelly plate. The jelly plate is quite sticky and it keeps the pigment, so it's perfect to make some prints with the PanPastels. What you also can use might be some very soft pastels, and just use them also like the PanPastels with a makeup brush. And there are some pastels out there that might draw directly on the gel plate, but I am not sure if this will work through the stencil. I think you will lose a lot of pigment. I'm printing in a sketchbook. I started some new A4 sketchbooks, and I have one sketchbook that is the one that I've used already before from Kunst und Papier, and I bought one super cheap sketchbook from the Action store to see if this will work with the jelly plate, and this is what I'm using today. I have already two of these sketchbooks printed completely, and I'm going to link up the flip through video at the info card so you can check that out. After I have applied the PanPastels, I'm covering them with a layer of acrylic paint. I decided to go with white in this case, but you can use any acrylic paint you want. As my paper is a bit smaller than the jelly plate itself, I'm just laying a piece of paper on top to press it down, and I try not to wait too long to lift the paper. You have two choices. You can either wait for it to dry completely and then lift the paper, then you will get more of the pigment onto your paper, I think, or you can lift it immediately. Don't lift it when it sits a while, but it's not dry, because then the paper is wet and might tear when you lift it. So either lift it immediately or lift it once it's completely dry. What I really love is that leftover on the jelly plate. And with the PanPastels, you always can print multiple layers, because the pigment is so strong and there will be so much left on your plate that you can print it multiple times. And with that white on the background I'm having here, I really love that grungy texture that this is giving me. And I'm going in with another layer of acrylic paint now, and I'm using burnt sienna. And I just cover that page, and then I'm going to do my next print. The paper in the sketchbooks is different. I think the Kunst und Papier has 160 GSM, whilst the cheap one from Action has only 130 GSM. I like both. The 160 is a bit more heavier, so you can use it more easily for some folding projects or book covers or envelopes, or pockets to tuck in some collage fodder. And I also like the thinner paper because it's easier to collage with, because it's thinner and you won't get a thick border around it. Yeah, and both papers work quite fine with the jelly plate, but as I said, don't leave it too long on the plate, or if you leave it there, let it dry completely. And I love that print. I think that turned out so beautiful. And the pattern of the stencil is quite nice. It reminds me on my grandmother's house a little bit. It's quite vintage, and it makes really lovely papers, I think, for all kinds of crafts, and also for junk journals, card making, and that kind of stuff. In my next layer, I will see how much I'm getting of that layer of PanPastels, and I'm using a Naples yellow. If you want to clean your jelly plate completely after using it with PanPastels, I recommend using olive oil or baby oil to clean it, and then go to the sink and wash it with a mild soap, because when it's oily it will not work very good afterwards. So wash it with some soap. That also helps in between washing the jelly plate with some mild soap. Then the paints sometimes pull together on the plate. They bead up, and that helps against beading up when you clean your plate. And here you can see some slight texture of the PanPastels on this print. As I mentioned, the stencil will come out on the 15th, together with some more stencils and 2 brand new stamp sets. So keep an eye on our shop. The new products will be 10% off. So maybe you like to subscribe to our newsletter so you don't miss that. What you can do when you have a stencil and if you've used it with PanPastels, you can just turn that around and then make a print to the plate. And here I just did it onto the plate where the other PanPastels were still sitting, and I just wanted to see what I get from this, because this gives you only the outlines of the pattern, because the pastel pigments stick to the edges of the cut stencil, and that can give you some really interesting effects on a background. And here I've used some kind of a Naples yellow greenish, I think, from Amsterdam. They have some beautiful Naples yellow colors which are very light but all have a light touch of color. They have a greenish and a reddish. And what I also really love using is the Titan Buff color, and they have a light and a dark Titan Buff. It's a bit nice to have some off-white colors for backgrounds, because I think sometimes white is very hard compared to a creamy or beigey color. And here's just a little bit of texture on that background, but that's also something I really love to have in my collection of papers, because you do not always need a paper that's fully covered with a pattern, especially when you make greeting cards or also with collage. Sometimes it's nice to have something that's calmer and not so textured. I will now just leave everything on the plate. Of course you can clean it, but I would like to just add another layer of that pattern using different colors from the PanPastels. I love these pastels. Originally, I bought those because years ago it was quite common or trendy to create paper flowers with cutting dies and then color these with the PanPastels. And that's why I bought quite a lot of these pastels. They are not cheap, they are quite expensive. And about, I think, 2 or 3 years ago, I started using those more in my sketchbook for sketching and drawing, because you can lay down a lot color with them quickly, and they also make a really lovely soft texture on the background, and that's what I use them for the most. But they are also really interesting to directly draw on the jelly plate, and yeah, use them. You can also use them in mixed media, but I do not do that very often except from Gelli Printing or in my sketchbook for drawing. I'm mixing a light and a darker color because I really like that effect you get. It looks a bit more vibrant compared to using just one color. Of course, you can make a rainbow pattern or whatever you like. And I'm going in with also one of these Amsterdam colors, not sure which exact color that is. So maybe the Naples Yellow Reddish or the Titan Buff. It's just not a pure white. What's also quite lovely is using the metallic PanPastels, but if you don't have those, you can use eyeshadow, for example, and work in the same way we did. And with the metallic ones, you can get really lovely effects, especially with our sketchy leaf stencils, because you can print a leaf pattern with your jelly plate, and that's also quite lovely if you have that in gold and then use it as a card background. I love this print as well. The first prints are usually my favorites because the colors are more intense. But as I said, sometimes when I'm working with them, I really enjoy the ones that are not as in your face and that are more yeah, calmer. I'm using an olive green from Schminke, and I have to say it's not that green in real life. It's more yellowish, and it's really an olive color. It looks like olive, exactly, but my camera picks it up more vibrant and more green than it is in real life. I picked it up recently when I was at our local art store, and I didn't want to buy an olive paint, but I saw it and it looked so beautiful, and it's a really lovely color. For jelly printing, I like the Schminke Academy paints and also the Royal Talents Amsterdam paints. That's also a really lovely print. It's very vintagey because of that olive green. Unfortunately, it looks more bright on the camera, but that's a really lovely color. For the next print, I'm using a turquoisey color. I just wanted to see what happens when I use a darker color for my background. I know that there is not a lot pigment left compared to my first layer with the pastels, but I just wanted to see how this is turning out. In my next step, I wanted to see how much I can clean the jelly plate by making a print and then leaving it there until it's completely dry. And therefore I'm going to use just a separate sheet of paper, and I make my print and I just let it sit there for at least, I would say, an hour until it does not feel wet. And that gives me a chance to pull the most up from the plate that's possible. And as I mentioned, I will let this sit until it's dry and then pick it up. And when I'm coming back to this video, it's completely dry, and that's now. And I'm just pulling the paper off the plate. It is a bit hard, but usually if you let the paper dry completely, it should not tear. And there you can see how much you can get off that plate when you wait until your paint is dry. And here I'm doing the same with the green color, and that's also not that green you can see here. It's the olive green light from Amsterdam, and it's much more yellowish and not as poison green, I would say. Just my camera picks the greens up so wrong. And also that turquoise I've used is not the exact color. I have the feeling that all the greens look not right on camera. And here I did the same. I paused my recording and then I came back once that print was dry, and I did that on a separate sheet of paper because I thought these are heavier papers, like 200 GSM, and maybe it's more safe to do it, but I think also the sketchbook pages should be able to handle that. Yes, and that was my video for today. I hope you enjoyed it, and maybe you are inspired, and maybe you already have some PanPastels and had no idea what to do with them. I wish you a lovely weekend, and I hope we will see us next time. Bye.